Just turned it all right on here.
Welcome to Hermit Woods, where there's a story in every bottle.
We are live.
From glass?
Hello,
Nice
everybody.
job.
Cheers. Yes.
Something in our glass to start
How
off.
about that? Yes.
Doing
yes,
pretty well.
very
We
good.
are, assuming you can all hear us fine, I'd say we are pretty on point today, which I've got to say I'm pretty proud of us for.
I know
since
you were.
Bob
you
is not
were-
here,
Yep, Bob is not here.
but we
Bob,
are here.
once again,
we have
she
food,
has
we have
proven that
drink.
she can do the whole thing. No problem.
Easy peasy.
Easy
I was gonna
peasy.
say, next week, maybe it's just me.
It could
I
be.
don't want to do a broadcast by myself. But
Yeah, we're going to be
Well,
somewhere else.
you and Travis and
Yeah,
somebody.
Yeah.
I don't know, somebody else.
Well,
you and
think about
Travis
that.
and Ben.
Yeah.
Just have fun.
That could
Yeah.
be.
Just a
We'll think
round
about that.
table discussion.
I'm
So-
hoping.
hang
I'm hoping
out.
you guys will be going live from your adventures.
Oh,
The
yeah.
problem is
Timing
that
is
that will
gonna
be
be-
11:30 at night.
Yeah, there's a
Where
time.
we're gonna be?
Fine.
So 11:30 at night after a day of skiing in the Alps
Yeah.
and drinking a little bit.
Oh, what,
You
During
could,
the
well,
time?
what if you could go live not at 5:30 this time? You could go live earlier in the day, and others people can tune in
Yeah.
live, or
We
it'll
could do
post
that.
later.
Oh yeah, we could go live from
Some-
5:30 Swiss time,
Yeah,
and then it gets recorded, and then it gets played at 6 hours
Yeah.
later at 5:30 this time.
that could work.
We could do that.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like.
And all the preamble. Blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. Ding
Oh.
ding.
Ding ding.
There we go.
The like on
Oh yeah,
Facebook.
Everybody got
we
that?
should do it. We should honor Bob. So, welcome everyone. We're glad to have you.
Oh, you're so good.
We're hoping, if you're tuning in now, you've already done this, but if you haven't, you should definitely subscribe to the channel or like us on Facebook. There's a bell button on YouTube underneath Chuck, I believe. Do your points, yeah,
we just
over
do the
that way.
pointing thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
And
a
on
Monty
Facebook
Python
somewhere,
thing.
there's a
Just
a thumbs up that you can like our page, and then you get notified whenever we go live, which is useful because while we do always make a point of being here Mondays at 5:30, sometimes we're live from elsewhere
Things happen,
at other
right.
times, other places. So that is helpful. We'll remind you again at the end. And if you enjoy listening to these every week, we encourage you to share with your friends.
Right.
might have other-
You get that timing that people, at the end of the show, they get to vote thumbs up.
Yay.
They want to subscribe because it's something that they enjoy.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Preemptive, like,
I like it.
you can trust us. It's going to be a good show. But at the end, if you agree and that it has been a good show,
That's how we do
it's
it.
that way.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's
Fair enough.
3 of us today. Bob is off in Maine, but has tuned in. He's part of the audience today, so
Hi, Bob.
he'll be here.
Oh,
Bob.
great.
Hey, Bob. Hope you're having a good time with your usual research.
Yeah, he's doing some research. I saw that right out the gate.
Oh,
he was
really?
out, on Sunday afternoon. He was already visiting some bakery.
Bakery.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Interesting.
They bake barley, and then they malt that barley, and then
Oh.
they steep that barley in water.
In water.
And then they boil it
Make
and
a
add
soup?
hops. And then a few
Make a
weeks
barley
later, they get this carbonated beverage out of this
Oh.
bakery that's called beer.
Beer. It sounds catchy.
I think that's the
Sounds
research part.
catchy and delicious too. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that I hear out there in Maine.
Oh yeah, they make a lot of good beer.
Yeah. So what are we
lot of
going to
good-
talk about?
We're going to talk about this. I'm very excited about this. This is my
Beautiful
third batch. This is
color.
my third batch of this. And you all get to have it before anybody else.
Wow. I already had
It's
a
not
little
even in bottle yet.
bit. Wow.
It's been
It's
in
brand
bottle
new.
before. Those were the previous vintages.
Do we have
Um,
guesses? from our audience
Or did
based
you
on
already
the
put this out?
I did.
Did you put it out?
I did.
Then
I
let's
did.
hope.
I did.
Let's hope they get 100%
Did they pay
correct.
attention? Yeah,
Let's
audience.
see if
What
they were
is in our
paying
glass
attention.
right now? Can you tell?
You know
Based
those
on the
teachers that would
bottles
give
on
you the
counter
answers and then they would
the title
quiz
of
you
the
and you'd get it
broadcast.
wrong?
Can I guess? Is it beer?
You could guess.
Is
It's
it
not beer.
It's not beer.
It's not beer.
Shoot.
There's no barley in here. There's no hops in here.
No
You know
barley.
what? You know what is in here? A whole bunch of blueberries.
Blueberries.
bunch.
It looks
Oh,
kind
Oh,
of
there
whole bunch
we
of
have an
blueberries.
A+ student, Bob Manley.
Bob Manley got it.
Bob Manley is
You
student
get
of
the
the day.
prize. Stay tuned after the show, and you.
Oh, I got
you'll-
some. Christine got it right. Michelle suggested cider. We've got some others.
Yeah,
Good job. Good
there you
job.
Yep. Wild Blue. So this is
Wild
the
Blue.
new batch of Wild Blue. It's going to be bottled on Wednesday. The bottles just showed up today. We need to label those and get them all set. And then Ben and I will put it out there. And this time, learning some techniques from the commercial brewing world of how to bring this from fruit to bottle a little bit faster. It's a lower alcohol product, so it can be ready like a beer is in a shorter amount of time. Same with the other ciders that we make. And in the beer world, you've fermented your pale ale and it's cloudy with yeast. And most breweries don't want to filter. They want to have the character of that beer there, but they want that yeast to settle out. And one of the tricks that they use that we just employed on this is to put that product into a tank and chill that tank down close to freezing and let it sit there for about 4 or 5 days.
Wow.
And all that yeast says, wow, it's way too cold in here. And they glom up and they drop
Nice.
out of it. And then off you run your beer or your Wild Blue into your container. And
So you never
You're all
filter it. You never filter
no, we did filter it
after that process.
after that process. We tried filtering it before and it was a total disaster. It just gummed up,
Oh,
with
yeah.
yeast.
Yeah.
Not too much gunk, yeah.
You know, it just didn't work. But the other thing that was really fun with this process, I've been trying to work with the blueberries to try to bring the fruity flavors of blueberries to the glass.
Right. Yeah.
And when you ferment blueberries for any length of time, you can extract some of the tannins and deeper, more stringent components from the skin. It's like chewing on an apple skin or a berry. The skin has a lot more astringency to it than the pulp. So when I make Petit Blue Reserve, I let it macerate on those skins for a couple of weeks. When I do this, I want to have it just be that fruitiness after just a few days, and then it gets separated off. So this time we actually did a free run, and then we did a gentle press, and then we did a hard press, and we kept those all separate. And we actually blended the light press back into this. And we're saving the hard press to blend with a portion of Kittens that's going to be blueberry cider again. So we're going to release, we had this
really?
years ago, and I'm going to take some of the process of making this and utilize it with a barrel of the heirloom hard cider and reintroduce our blueberry cider.
Wow.
It'll be interesting. That'll be an interesting direct comparison is drinking Wild Blue next to that blueberry
Blueberry
cider.
cider, yeah.
That'll be very interesting. How long, a quick question of the audience from Michelle, how long start to finish on Wild Blue?
This batch, I believe we've got the blueberries in the beginning of December.
So
So it'll
that's
be about a
nice,
month.
quick
Month,
turnaround, yeah.
It'll be about a month. And I think we could probably do it faster than that if we didn't do that failed filtering attempt. Just trying to let gravity do it on its own. Next time Ben and I spoke, we'll get the blueberries in. We'll ferment those blueberries, we'll press it off, separate it, let it settle, finish fermenting, and then it'll go into the bright tank, get cold crashed, and then it'll get filtered. And we might be able to do it in 3 weeks.
Wow. That's impressive.
Which will really help because it's not something I want to run out of. And it's a very popular wine. Maya distributes a bunch of this to Hannaford's and elsewhere.
Yeah.
So part of the impetus to get this back is we've been out of Wild Blue for about a month now.
Yep. Yeah,
So
people have been asking.
it's coming back.
Yeah, it's delicious.
So what do you think about this batch? Do you like it?
It's really nice. It's really blueberry. It has a nice mouthfeel and a nice level of carbonation that's appropriate. It has a great aromatics. I mean, it's super blueberry.
Yeah.
And maybe even a little bit of yeast character in there too.
Really?
Yeah, there's a little something in there that's like part of the fermentation to me. That it's really nice. It's
It
complements.
may be because it's young.
And it may be,
Maybe because it's young and fresh.
And it just came out.
Kind of like a Beaujolais. Some of those have that young, bright character.
It has a really nice level of balance of this acidity to sweetness.
Yeah,
really,
I think this is about right.
Yeah, it really. I mean, it really
just-
tastes
Do you
like.
know
blueberry.
about
I could just drink.
residual sugar on this? There's got to be a little
We
bit,
did,
tiny bit.
I think it was 30 grams per liter, so 3%.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
we do a
which is
bench
high by
trial.
our wine standards. Most is almost
Yeah.
0, but just a little bit. But it's not.
I'll
not
look it
sweet.
up right here on my fancy computerized system here. 22 Wild Blue. See what our additions were. At 30
this
grams
should-
per
if
liter,
you're
so
bottling Wednesday, that
3%.
means by probably Wednesday afternoon, but at least by the end of the week, we'll have this back out on the shelves for everybody.
Wednesday afternoon, I'm sure, and Maya will come by and grab
Mm-hmm.
cases of it and send that off to shops,
Yeah.
which will be good.
Yeah, that's delicious.
This
so,
is
so what do you call this as a beverage? It's
Well,
not
that's a
not
good question.
That's been a conundrum
about
since we first made
7%
it.
alcohol-ish. Is that right? So it's in the cider range of.
So I've always thought of, and I don't know if this is correct, but a lot of portions of northwestern France and Great Britain make a wide range of ciders.
Right.
And they make them out of varieties of fruit.
It's
They're
so-called
not
cider.
always, and they call them ciders.
'Cause it depends on where you are. Some places, the definition of cider is
Has to be apples. Right.
And other places, the definition isn't necessarily apple, but that's what people assume.
Yeah.
And then, because there are different varieties, we've talked about this before. I remember when we were trying to come up with what to call this, we talked about Perry is
Is a
the term for
pear-based
pear
cider-like
Yeah,
Right.
product.
but it's the same type of thing. But there isn't a term,
in our
there isn't a
country-
generic term for just a fruit
Right.
thing. Like how melomel is a generic term for a mead made with
With fruit.
fruit.
Right.
There isn't a term for a cider made with.
Yeah, it's really
General
strange.
other than
And,
apple.
and the federal government, when I submitted the formula for this, they said it had to be called a sparkling wine.
Not a cider.
okay.
It could not be called a
So-
cider.
By their definition, cider is apple.
Cider is apples.
Yeah.
We need a new term.
Is it it's high enough alcohol to be a wine?
Yeah, they anything
like no.
7% or over.
7% or over.
Yeah.
So it has to be 7%. Or it's in no man's land. If you made this at 6%, it couldn't exist. There would be no
still
word for
actually
it.
exist.
They'd
No,
probably
it
still
would
call
not
it wine.
exist.
Yeah,
It would have no
wouldn't
place.
acknowledge it.
Would
Yes.
they call it a session wine?
So yeah.
Session blueberry wine?
Yeah, you get double IPAs, you get triple Belgians. When are we going to come up with a triple wine?
I think
Something
that's
that's
like
A double imperial cider.
a double imperial cider.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think, isn't that an apple wine?
Well,
that is
so that's the
right,
thing.
right.
We've talked
Well,
about
that's an
that's
apple
the
wine.
key
Right,
definition,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Is that it's an apple wine versus a cider when you've added more yeast and more sugar
Yeah,
to
more sugars
carry
to
the fermentation
bring the
process
alcohol up.
further. But
Yeah.
you
Right.
don't do that with this, right?
No.
This is just the sugars that are naturally occurring in those wonderful.
Oh,
blueberries.
actually, this does get a little trick
It does get
on that.
a trick.
Yes. So I started off.
So it is more than a cider.
So it did start off with 100% blueberries.
Yeah.
And those 100% blueberries will create 7% alcohol, depending on the ripeness and the sugar content of the fruit each year. But when I was experimenting with this, I found that straight 100% blueberries is too intense to enjoy as a light cider-like product.
Sure.
So I went through a bunch of trials and I found out that I like 28.5%, about 30% water added to the blueberries. And when I add water to make something that's this crushable drink, I've diluted the natural sugars. So I add in the sugars that I diluted by the water so that the resulting alcohol would match what the blueberries are. But yeah, there's a little bit of water added and a little bit of sugar added to balance that water when this gets fermented.
Yeah.
And again, it's to make a drink that's really like crushable, enjoyable format.
Stuff. I know we haven't been canning as frequently as we have in the past, but this would be so good.
Well, once we own a canning line, we will be canning all sorts of stuff. With lots and lots of ideas of different session meads, different cider-like products that we can create, for sure.
Yeah. Did you try it with any of our charcuterie plate, Merike? Did you find something?
I haven't. I've been trying to preserve a little bit of it, but that's a good opportunity. Matt was asking what's on our board tonight. The trouble with our board tonight is that Travis brought it up maybe 10 or 15 minutes before we started, so we did a pretty good job decimating it.
Yeah.
But I will hold it up a little so you can see.
Yeah.
But it's actually a pretty sort of standard
another wonderful
charcuterie.
blend. Yep.
3 different cheeses, 3 different meats. All the meats are from Fortuna's. So this is, I think, the Finocchione. This one might be the truffle.
That's a truffle.
Yep. And then we've got
And the
both
coppola.
of these. Yeah, the coppa, which is, I think, maybe my favorite. I love every pizza that they make with the coppa on it.
Oh,
is
that's really, really good.
my favorite. We've got Jack's garlic and herb crackers. We've got some ciabatta, an actual multi-grain ciabatta, which is a little
That's
different.
really good.
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
This looks like the 5 Generations cheddar.
That's the
I
cheddar.
bet this is Harmon's.
I think so. Yep.
Tastes very cheddar-like.
And what's the wedge again? Is that the aged
It's
Gouda?
either the aged Gouda, but he's also been getting a couple of other cheeses, maybe the Chefsog, but other really sharp,
Yeah.
not Parmesan-like, but really, really hard cheeses.
Yep.
And then we've got the lovely Blackwater Everyday Cafe mustard, a little bit of pickle and olive, and of course the Waz balsamic fig.
Yeah, the was. Yeah, the wonderful
is
was.
Wonderful
Quite
was.
delightful.
The wonderful was.
I think
the
of-
wonderful was.
When I'm pairing cider, I feel like a lot of things go well, but to me, apple and cheddar
Goes
Yeah.
really well.
classic.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted
That's
to have
good.
like a grilled cheese, sourdough grilled cheese with apple and hard, nice, sharp cheddar and a
Right.
cider. It's a favorite.
Well, my glass is empty, so I'm going to open something.
All right, I can finish this real quick. Yeah, I think this would be
Where should I
canned
go
chuggable.
next? Let's
I
go.
feel like order-wise, this would actually, if we were doing this in sort of the proper order, I would think this would actually be last. This is
Probably.
probably the most
Yeah, so
flavorful.
I'm going to
the
back
boldest,
up to the heirloom
strongest.
cider.
Yeah. So this is going to be quite a contrast.
So this is our very first cider. This is one that had one of these
Oh, a little
discolored
sticky.
corks. That's why it was
Yeah.
ended up in my fridge downstairs.
Oh yeah.
That's happened to a
Because
few
we've
of
been
them.
we've been sold out of it for a while.
This is firewood and kittens.
This is Firewood and Kittens.
Yep.
I love, so when we've talked about the labels on these cider bottles are some of the best ones we've got. They're just fun, distinctive. People recognize them from being distributed. We've got our Hermit on them, and Deb Lucky designed them
Yes.
as she designed all our cans. And the different stories that she put on each one.
Yep. They're
Do you remember, Ken? Did you give any guidance to Deb on that, or was
she
that
asked me,
completely
she
her?
does this every time. So she asked me to tell her a little bit about what went into the strawberry rhubarb or
Mm-hmm.
the hard cider. And from my little, piecing together, well, on this one, I focus on obtaining classic old New England cider apples, all heirloom cider apples. And then from my reading, hearing about people using quince and pears and other things in their cider, that I pick some of those and throw these into the cider as well. And from that, she comes up with these stories.
Did she read the sort of whole biography about the Hermit as well, do you think? Do you think she
I'm sure
knows
she
the,
did.
the sort
I'm sure
of,
she
the
did.
story
yeah,
of the Hermit?
because she likes crafting stories.
Yeah.
So, like her lunch witch, she would have gone into and sort of wrapped her head around what this hermit must have been like in the woods, not too far from
Because
here.
we do know he made his own hard cider, right? That's,
He did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I
Yeah.
thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
He must have, even if nobody knows for fact that he did. I'm sure he did.
The history book says he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
That could have been a bunch of people drunk on cider writing those books.
Nah, possible.
could be.
Oh yeah,
But I
he must
think
have been.
of-
He must have
Yeah.
made cider.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's put it in.
Yeah.
It'll make it back.
That's right.
I definitely think
Yeah.
of your cider though as being sort of traditional New England style.
That's my attempt here from reading about the ciders.
Okay, yeah, Bob can confirm. Yeah, Deb made herself very familiar with Joseph in preparation for all this. But it's fun, yeah, where the kittens come from. You
right.
never, I picture him having chickens, maybe. I don't know if I picture the hermit as having kittens.
No, we
That
call
was
it
not
kittens
that was
because,
not the hermit's fault.
there were some stray kittens, and so he decided to just sell them.
Actually, so
and make
I
some
could
money.
picture
So the
that.
hermit's
I
like,
picture him
oh, look
taking
at
in a
this.
stray
This cat showed up and
a hermit
birthed
of a
this
cat,
litter.
maybe,
And then
wandering
it's like,
into
okay,
his camp.
I'm going to sell firewood and kittens.
Is that what he said?
That's what
I
it
bet.
says right here.
Firewood and
That
kittens.
was
for sale.
Firewood and kittens also
Well,
for sale.
Yeah.
It's remarkable
So-
how many people, because we've got that cutout of the hermit downstairs, right when you first walk in,
Yeah.
how many people walk in, especially when you get kids ever, but adults as well. They see that and go, do you really? Kittens? Do you have kittens for sale? I'll take a kitten.
For the
Well, that's what
first
started
three or
with kittens,
first
didn't it?
3 or 4 years, and we still donate 5% to the Humane Society. And the first few years when we released this, and I think the first vintage was 2015.
Yes.
So it's been quite a few years now. The Humane Society from nearby has brought in
I'd love
cats
to.
and
We
kittens.
should reach out to them again.
We
and try
brought
and
in
get that event
firewood,
again.
put it on the deck. No
Yeah.
one bought any of the firewood.
Yeah, no.
And all the cats and kittens get adopted.
Yeah.
And we
Including-
pour cider around for everybody who's in the shop.
Yeah. Well, I know somebody who did get some kittens out of this deal.
We did
Pinot Noir.
acquire 2 dark kittens. at
Yeah,
that
the
time.
winery cats,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Pinot
They-
and Noir.
Pinot and Noir.
Yeah.
Yes.
They lived here at the winery for a while when this third floor
They did.
was a ping pong table and office
Yes.
and various other sundry spaces. But
That was great. People would be at the bar sampling wine, and a cat would jump up on the end of the bar and
I
sort of
love
walk
that,
along.
yeah. Well,
I'm sure it wouldn't be allowed now.
Well, we didn't have a
It
restaurant.
was a
then.
restaurant, yeah.
Right, we didn't have a restaurant then.
It was that changed. That's
But Pinot
Yeah.
Noir are now home, alive and well.
yes. I'm sure.
I'm sure. I know you can't. I've found this trouble being an audience member sometimes on these shows. You can't comment with pictures. Otherwise, I'd ask Bob to show us a picture
put
of
up
Pinot
pictures,
Noir.
right.
But they're doing well.
So
So this
for a
segment-
while, we made firewood and kittens that we call kittens as our heirloom hard cider. And then the next product we brought out was a blueberry cider. And I had mixed some of the kittens with our Petite Blue.
Oh
I
yeah.
thought, that's a great combination. Let's make a blueberry cider. So we did that for a while. And we're bringing that back, as we mentioned. But then I think the second or third year, I had a French oak wine barrel that was empty. And I'm like, I got to try putting this stuff in a barrel. And so I actually ferment this in a stainless steel tank. And for the reserve, we called it the Heirloom Hard Cider Reserve, had a slightly greenish label with a slightly different story on it.
Yeah.
I would start the fermentation with all the Kingston Black and the pears and the quince all in the big vat. And then as soon as I pressed it off, a portion of it would go into a French oak barrel and finish fermenting. And after a while, I wanted to make more ciders, a variety of ciders, but we have so many shelf space and I have so many containers downstairs. So I had to drop.
Remember that? Yeah.
And I really liked the Reserve more than the kittens. It had everything that the kittens had, plus it had this richness, roundedness, and a very delicate touch of oak character to it.
Yep.
So 2 or 3 years ago, when we started doing the cranberry cider, we decided to drop the Reserve. And I said, I'm going to make the kittens just like the Reserve.
Reserve. Yeah.
So the kittens became the Reserve,
yeah.
but it retained the older label, the kittens label. So this is made, fermented with all the fruit chopped up in it. It gets pressed off and immediately goes into oak barrel. I have 5 this year. Like most years, I do 5 or 6 barrels of this hard cider. And I love watching the bubbler, the fermentation take place and finish off in the barrel. And it's a surprisingly, to me, an easy drinking cider, but it has a lot of complexity to it that's not like you have to pay attention to me. You can just drink it.
Yep.
But there's a whole bunch that goes into this.
It seems a little more acidic, drier, much more subtle in aromatics and in flavor profile. But to me, it's really that you get the bitterness. You really get what a good, real hard cider is
New
all
England
about.
cider should be, right.
And it's not. I mean, I think that the popular ciders that you buy in the bars and the restaurants they're serving, they're all much closer to 3% or more alcohol, sugar. So they're much sweeter, much more.
They tend to be sweeter,
juicy kind of,
and a lot of like Granny Smith,
and a
classic
Granny
green
Smith
apple
sort of flavor, right?
Everybody who thinks apple thinks, oh, it's green apple. We make our candies that way, you know. Hard apple candies have that green apple character, but most apples on the planet don't taste like Granny Smith apples.
Right. No. I think that this is the quintessential cider purist cider. I mean, if you're a real
It's light,
cider
dry.
This is what I like. This is my
person,
cider.
I think this is one of the best types I've ever had anywhere.
Well, it's just an energizing drink too. I mean, hard cider to me is like working drink. I can, if I'm going to be stacking firewood or something in the afternoon at home, I just grab a bottle of this and take it out, and I'm just throwing sticks of wood into a pile, and I'm drinking hard cider, and it's just perfect.
Will you come to my house if I buy a case?
Maybe.
Stack some wood?
Yeah.
Well, no.
I will.
If I go to your house, I'll watch you stack wood while I drink your cider. It's not transferable that easily.
I don't know. I also always have an easy time with cider. Like it's not as dangerous as some other alcohols are in a way. Like,
Well, it's only 7%.
I can drink a lot of it. It doesn't make me too incapacitated.
Don't try drinking a gallon of it. I gave him a gallon once. It was left over from a bottling. Remember that? And you were stacking wood or splitting wood, and you're like, "Oh, I just wanted to finish that jug, Ken, but I couldn't finish it."
I thought that was beer.
No, I think it was hard cider. Was it beer? Oh no, maybe it was beer.
Yeah, I think that was beer, but it certainly easily could be.
Great question from Michelle.
Yes.
Wondering if it's carbonated. She's noticed it's
Yes.
bottled champagne style, but not champagne level bubbles, which I don't know.
Correct.
Have you ever seen a cider that's bottled at that level?
No.
Well, I used to make a lot of it that way.
Did you?
So I would do it like a beer and bottle condition it.
Oh.
So you throw some sugar
yeah.
and yeast into it, put the cap on, and then let it bottle condition. And so you end up like a champagne with some yeast in the bottom. And with champagne, most people go through this arduous task of disgorging it, getting rid of the yeast that's in there, and then they have a clear product. As a home brewer, I would just carbonate my beers in the bottle, and I would carbonate my hard cider in the bottle. So
And then it was
when
bubblier.
we were making, cider at the Zimmers or whatever, and bring it back, and it would ferment, and then it would either go into a keg and get force carbonated like this is before it gets bottled, or I would prime the bottles. And that creates a better texture, a better mouthfeel. If the yeast are creating the CO2, the bubbles tend to be tinier and create a richer mouthfeel. When you take a tank of CO2 and push it through what looks like a stone in a fish tank to bubble oxygen through, this is bubbling CO2 through a container of beer or cider, and it creates all of the CO2, but it's a little coarser, a little larger bubbles, a different mouthfeel.
This is much fewer bars pressure than you would get from a method champenois.
That's right.
Process,
right?
So this is
the same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing we did
Carbonated,
with our strawberry.
Yeah.
And soon to be in our rosé and crabapple wines,
Exciting, yeah.
sparkling wines. They'll go from this 1 bar, 15 psi pressure in a typical beer tank to 5 bars.
That's a big difference.
75 psi.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Have you considered making, in a way, like how this is sort of the base cider, and you use this to make the blueberry cider and things like that, in the same way that we have 3 honey that you
Use
make
as a
other meads.
Yeah.
Have you considered making other ciders using different
there's
fruits
so
that we've got?
many.
There's
good
so many different fruits that we
ciders
work
to
with.
do. It's
Would you make,
just like
a
the
rhubarb
mead is a
cider?
perfect analogy. Yeah, a rhubarb cider would be
Rhubarb
awesome.
cider
A rosehip cider.
Rosehip cider. Or,
There's so many things that we could do that would be really fun.
yeah,
But I only have 100 containers.
right.
And I'm jostling as many things as I can through 100 containers
Only 100.
to produce the products. I think it's either 100 or 105.
That's a
something
lot.
like that.
I
That is a
can
lot.
see it. I
And
believe
we,
it, but
we
it's-
track every single container
Yeah.
every day and make sure things aren't going sideways.
I'm sure, you know, I
Let's
think
go
if we
here.
were a cidery, of course, I'm sure you'd be doing much more of that. But because we're
Yeah.
we're a winery, that's sort of what we are first. And it's great
Well,
that we
even
have the cider and we
cideries-
have the mead, but we of course need to have all of our wines at the same time. So we can't have 10 different ciders.
Right. I
in
mean, you
addition
go to
the
Citizen Cider or
30
something
different
like that
wines.
in Vermont, and they make great cider. And they have, 6 or 8 flagship ciders that they produce all the time. And then they got another dozen
Yeah.
one-offs and unique stuff. And you always go there and it's a fun,
Yeah.
unique sort of thing. So they have 15 products.
Yeah.
We have like 30 products.
Yeah.
So if I want to, I'd love to make a dozen different types of cider, but then I got to drop a dozen
Yeah.
wines or meads or whatever. So it's a balance. And we keep adding stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not
Different
dropping
ways
that
to do
many.
things.
It's a lot easier to add somehow than it is to drop.
So while you're pouring this next one, I'd love to hear from the audience what you are drinking tonight. It's always a good question, wondering what people are on. We've got a lot of our usuals here, of course, but some new faces as well,
Oh, great.
which is great. I see Michelle has been commenting a bunch, and Gary is here, and Christine is here.
Hello,
Matt
everybody.
and Lynn are here. Karen's on.
Thank you all for showing
Yeah, I
up
see Priscilla's
every
listening this
time.
week.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Yeah.
So this has quickly become one of my favorite ciders. And this happened,
Oh, it smells so good.
I think the first time like 3 years ago. For the first time, we had an excess of crab apples,
Oh,
Dolgo
right. That was
crab apples.
2019.
2019.
Right?
We
I
had an
remember that. Yeah, that was my
excess.
first fall.
Yeah.
Chuck brokers all of our crab apples from a bunch of different farms around the area. And I was looking for like 5,000 pounds of crab apples to turn into wine.
Yeah.
And he showed up at 9,000 pounds.
Whoopsie.
So,
I remember that day.
you know
I was
those
working on
tanks
that
that I
day.
have? I got a fixed capacity here of stuff. I actually bought boxes with heavy mill plastic bags in them to store some of the wine. It was that chaotic.
Yep.
Well, we made a ton of crab apple wine in
We did.
2019.
You did. Yes.
I'm gonna
So
share a
much
picture.
so in 2020, which was a bad year for the
Yeah.
crop, we didn't need to make any wine because we still had a whole bunch of the 19. So we thought, wow, let's make a cider out of these crab apples.
What a great
So
idea.
we made a crab apple cider. So the way we do this is we get a fresh pressed apple cider from Apple Hill, from Chuck Souther down just outside of Concord, New Hampshire. We get our heirloom cider from them, and we get our base sweet cider. So they'll crush Macintosh and other apples that have good sugar content, but not a lot of complex tannic structure that you would want for an heirloom cider. But that becomes a base. So we have this stuff, it's kind of like honey and water being mixed together as a base. I take that apple cider and I get out all those Dolgo crab apples and chop them up and throw them into the cider, and they ferment together. And what's interesting, and I still don't know how this works, our crab apple wine comes out a rosé color.
Yeah.
I do add a little bit of blueberries in there to help stabilize that color.
Yeah.
But the fruit
initially
itself
is
creates that bright color.
yeah. Mhm.
This one has got the same concentration of crab apples,
Yeah.
and it always turns out this straw color.
Yeah.
And this is a little bit darker than the first vintage.
Wow.
But it doesn't have any color, but it's Dolgo crab apples.
Yeah, it's something to do with the process. Doesn't extract the colors from the. from
I
the
don't
skin.
know. I don't know why, because in making the heirloom crab apple wine, it's just water, sugar, and the crab apples.
Mm.
And this is those crab apples plus sweet cider.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, a very approachable, really crushable, easy drinking cider. It's got all these, great apple flavors, not Granny Smith by any means, but it's very familiar. It seems like if you've smelled an apple pie or you've tasted an apple pie, you're thinking about some of those flavors that come through. This has some of that without all the cinnamon or the sweetness that's there.
Yeah, I think I like the heirloom crabapple wine itself. The Dolgo brings this really great apple character and flavor. That's the other apple, not the Granny Smith.
Right.
And it's really apple forward. And this is like apple cider. I mean, it's exactly what it says it is. And the crabapple is really the thing that brings out that. This is just a way of presenting that flavor from the heirloom crabapple.
And it's not the same flavor as our crabapple wine.
It's not, but it's on the same vein, and it really complements well with the blending cider that you use as a base on this. But it is a much different character.
Yeah,
and it's appropriate for this alcohol content. And
I think so. I think it's another one of these things. You open a bottle and you just drink the bottle.
It's I think
this one
that
is interesting. We were just talking about the carbonation. This one tastes more carbonated.
This is a little more carbonated than this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm learning about carbonation and the ins and outs of carbonation. And so, especially working with Ben, that I really like, in a commercial brewery, carbonation levels are really dialed into the style of beer. 2.2 volumes, 2.3 volumes, 2.5 volumes, depending on the beer style, elevates, lifts, or keeps it more subdued and rounded and rich, depending on what you want to achieve. So Ben and I, as we chill down and carbonate these products, we're sampling at different CO2 levels. We bought a device that allows us to sample it without it off-gassing.
Oh, wow.
So it's called a little pigtail, and that's hooks on to this typical tap. And so it's as if you were pulling a cork and pouring it into the glass.
Cool.
So that we can properly taste it and assess, okay, do we want more or do we want less CO2? This particular batch, which was just bottled about a month ago, of the crabapple cider, we actually went a little too far in our opinion on what we liked. And so we backed off and bled off some of the CO2. It's still a little bit brighter than I would want, although by the time you get to the end of the bottle, it's probably just about right.
We've got to check in with the audience. We've got a lot of good comments. So I asked what people are drinking. So Michelle's got some Chardonnay. Lynn is drinking 3 Honey Gold. Christine is drinking heirloom crabapple.
Nice.
Bob is drinking a Storm Surge from Rock Harbor Brewery, which is right below his Airbnb over in Rockland. We also have a classic, actually even better than usual, pun from Priscilla that's telling us, as a labor and delivery nurse, she used to toast the new baby with a non-alcoholic cider, saying, "Here's to what was once insider is now outsider."
Oh boy.
Which is just fantastic.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Priscilla's always got a good one.
Good. Bob got the story. So Michelle was asking if you have your own crabapple trees, or if you
I do
out in Sanborn, and Bob piped in with the story of discovering that crabapple tree, that Dolgo tree that inspired so much of our crabapples.
Right. That was the crabapple tree in Bob's front yard, was a Dolgo crabapple tree.
Yeah.
In my backyard, I have 2 big, beautiful crabapple trees that produce these little tiny things that drop all over the place.
And that's what
that
most
make a
people
mess.
think of when they
And
think
that's
of
what I've always thought of as a crabapple.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I have made wine out of that stuff.
Yeah, I remember.
And it is incredibly astringent.
It's very astringent.
And we had a bottle of it not too long
We
ago.
did. Yeah, it was actually had improved a lot.
It had improved a lot.
10
It
years
had
later.
finally softened after 10 years of sitting in the bottle. But I had it in my notes from our talk here. This coming fall, I'm going to make a batch of crabapple wine from my crab apples, and I'm going to use that in small amounts to the products to dial in some astringency
Oh, nice.
to it. This is what I was doing with sumac.
Sumac, yeah.
With Red Scare. Early vintages of Red Scare had sumac in it. So I try to use what's growing nicely around here and paint with it.
Yeah.
And a liquid
Interesting.
form.
Karen too. Karen says she's drinking wine that her husband made out of Hermit Woods wine. So I'm intrigued by what he's made.
Oh, wow.
See if she gives us a little more.
Yeah. Wonder what kind of wine it is.
Oh, never mind. No, that's wrong.
Nope.
I misinterpreted it based on punctuation. She said she's out of Hermit Woods wine, so she's drinking the wine that her husband made instead.
Oh, there you go. Wow.
Okay.
Oh, that's not good to be out of Hermit Woods wine.
I know. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. We'll see you here soon, Karen.
Yeah, we know where you can get more.
Yes.
We do know about that. Yeah, this is, I mean, to me, this could go into 1,000 restaurants across planet Earth and just be the perfect cider.
Yeah, the problem is that we'd have to do a little bit more than 50 cases a year.
Well, we don't really.
That's about it.
We just
have
want to keep
600
all this
bottles
for
of it, that's it.
ourselves so we can enjoy it here. Right? We don't really want to share it with everybody, do we?
Oh, no. I mean, I agree with that. I
Like to keep them close to home. No, it's really super. And this is the first vintage of this. This
is the
Second.
second or
vintage.
third. Second or
second or
third.
third.
Yeah. I think it's the
It
second.
was out for a while, but I think when
It
it
was
first
out.
came out, it was fantastic. And then
The other one that
you
that-
didn't make much the first time, I know, and it
Right, it was a
ran out
much
pretty
smaller
quick.
batch. It ran out real fast. This
was also.
this flip flops with the crabapple cider.
Oh, okay.
So I got a certain
I
amount.
love the
I know I got a
crabapple
certain
cider.
number
I
of
hope we
Dolgo
get that
crab
back.
apples to deal with, and a certain number of containers.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we make a cider, which is a honey-based wine, a mead, with the crab apples, which is delightful.
Yeah. Yum.
And sometimes we make the cider. I think 2 years ago in 2020, we made both a crabapple cider and a crabapple cider.
I love, the cider.
And I made a sparkling crabapple wine at that time in 2020.
The cider is definitely a staff favorite
Yeah.
when it comes to the meads, I think.
Yeah.
That's
Well, we had a Dolgo problem this last year too, right?
You have a Dolgo problem.
I buy
That's
all the
all.
Dolgos.
You just have a Dolgo problem.
That are available. That's my job. I buy them all.
Is that your job?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you never know. At the beginning of the season, the farmers say, "Well, this really looks like a bad year," and there's definitely an on and off cycle to that crop. And then by the time they start picking, it's like, well, I guess we have a lot more than I thought we did.
That
By
happened
like-
this year.
By like double.
I
right?
know. I thought
It's
it
like,
was.
I don't, what are you going to do? But up here, our farmer here in Loudon had a very poor year.
Yeah.
Right. And
That was really
but
weird.
the farmers down in the southern part of the state had a bumper crop
Right.
in what should have been probably an off year. So
Mhm.
that tells me that next year, who knows? I would expect that we're going to have an off year, except that our farmer up here, maybe he'll have a good year because he had a bad year, but it's agriculture. There's just no way of knowing. And we don't have any way of preserving this fruit so we can use it
It's partly
year round.
the enjoyable part of the challenge of being a winemaker, as opposed to a brewer, let's say, where you're buying all your ingredients and you're making it by what you sell. This is an agricultural-based product. So depending on what happens in Mother Nature dictates what we end up being able to make.
Right.
And we got to scramble sometimes. And that happens at all wineries because wineries that are growing all their grapes that they use have a certain number of vessels and they have a certain acreage that they're planting. Every year, the yield that they get is a little bit different because of what Mother Nature dishes up. And they either end up with not enough or too much.
Yep.
And so it's a great challenge.
That's great because sometimes, it might start off as being a disappointment because it means, oh, we don't have enough of this fruit that we were hoping to have to make this wine that we made last year. But it might mean, well, but we have tons of this, so we're going to make this instead. And sometimes that new product ends up being just as good, if not better, than what we were planning on making.
Absolutely. I've had that experience here. Yeah.
So that's always pretty great.
There's a lot of being nimble with the production area. Like,
And it's always fun.
remember
Oh,
Chuck's
yeah.
Peach Folly?
Oh, yes. Oh, the peach
Here,
folly.
shout
Anybody
out
out
to Chuck's
there
Peach Folly.
remember the peach folly? Chuck's
tell of
peach
it.
folly?
Chuck's Peach Folly.
That was before your time. Right?
Yeah, that's
You just got a ton of
Oh
peaches.
my goodness.
right?
Yeah. Well, Chuck Souther, the farmer.
Oh, it's not even you, Chuck.
No, well,
at
he
Apple
likes
Hill
to say
Farm.
it's Chuck Souther, but
I had picked
There
up
was fault on all.
a trailer load of Dogos, and I was stopped in there to pick up X amount of peaches. That he had a ton of peaches. Then they needed to be done something with immediately, if not sooner. And they're perfectly right. And he said, I have all these peaches. You don't take another pallet or whatever. So I was like, sure, why not? So he brought another pallet here. And
sure, why not? Didn't cost anything, and Chuck shows up. Hey, look at this, Ken.
Ken's head exploded.
Yeah, that was a bit.
And
that was
then,
sort of my introduction to the realities of an agricultural-based business.
I was then, so to call this wine Chuck's Peach Folly and blame me for the wine, I think was shooting the messenger. All I was the delivery boy of peaches.
You were, and thank you very much. And you were thanking very much. But it was such a fun name because the joke went, you and Bob and I would talk about names, and we would create this little Google sheet.
Yeah.
And I had to send the formula in and get approval from the feds on what I created. Bob would create the label and send that into the feds to get the label approved.
Yeah.
And so we were talking about these different things, and we had come up with a name for this peach wine collectively. And then in the last minute or something, we decided, well, let's just change it to Chuck's Peach Folly. And then Bob went into the spreadsheet, looked at all the things, said, oh, I guess we're making this called Chuck's Peach Folly. And he sent it in and got it approved.
Yep.
And so, and we printed it.
Yeah.
And then we got
That's what,
I guess it is what's
so that's right. It was sort of
and on top of it, for whatever reason, these peaches made a wine with a very unique aroma, let's call it. And there were so many peaches at this farmer that my friend and colleague Lynn at Copper Beach Winery got a whole bunch of these peaches. She made her peach wine the way she makes it normally. I made my peach wine the way I normally make it. And then a couple months later, we're talking and she goes, so Ken, how does your peach wine smell? And I said, well, it actually doesn't smell very good. I don't know what's going on. She goes, me neither. I don't know what happened, but this stuff just doesn't smell very good.
Tastes good.
So we had the whole, people were at the tasting bar. We used to clog their nose and have a sip of the wine. Eli gave me a bottle of Chuck's Peach Folly, and I have it in my basement. So we can actually.
Oh, we'll have to do a peach show then.
Oh, we'll have to do.
We should do a peach Folly show.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I have a few different peach products.
I'll put it in the schedule. We'll get that going. We'll do a peach.
We'll bring in
show.
Peach Folly. I have a Lake House White, Meredith Bay White, Winnie White, Melange Blanc. All these peaches.
A peach show.
Yeah. I wonder, it's not for such a long time. I love doing, when we're doing a fruit themed show, I love doing it around harvest time. So like you have the peaches.
The actual thing.
I don't know if we can hang on to that bottle of Peach Folly until next summer. But.
Probably can, yeah.
Oh yeah, no problem. I'm not drinking it.
So maybe we'll bookmark that for next summer.
It'd be a shame if it got broken somewhere between now and then.
Well, we were talking about shooting something.
We were, yes. We thought they would make very nice. Very nice clay pigeons at some point, yeah.
So also, I suppose we should mention, as we're sipping happily before we finish it.
So we just shifted here to another one, offered in either a can or a bottle. So this is based on a sweet cider that we get from Chuck Souther, but instead of putting Dolgo crab apples into it, we take cranberries from Cape Cod, and we put those in there and ferment it. And this is just a wonderful combination of a tart and tangy fruit.
It is.
Cranberries combined with a nice, rich, enjoyable product called apple cider.
It's so good.
And it's just really easy drinking.
I can't get enough of this. I could drink a can of this every night,
Yeah,
every day, all day long.
Yeah, it's very popular. So that's the cranberry cider.
Yeah, so it's so incredibly drinkable, flavorful, cran apple-y. I mean, it's like you went to Ocean Spray and had cran apple delight, whatever that was.
Right.
Remember we used to get that in a can. And this drink's like that, except it's real.
Except it's got alcohol in it.
Yeah, it's real cider, real cranberries, and it's delicious and drinkable. It comes in a can for the summertime, in a cool bottle.
What inspired this one initially?
Bob.
How long
This
has
is
it been?
Bob's. This is Bob's.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
You know, everybody's,
Bob, you're the best.
this is a collective. You know, Chuck has come up with ideas. Ken, why don't you try this? And Bob, I was making a batch of rosé. Apple cider, cranberries, some Kingston black apples, and I was going to ferment it. And Bob said, have you ever thought about just doing a cranberry cider? I was like, that sounds like a good idea, Bob.
Yep.
So we haven't had this that long.
Poured off just a small amount of cider and some cranberries and made a little less rosé and made a new cranberry cider product, which turned out to have this gorgeous color.
So yes, the color is another
Yeah.
perk of this one, I think.
Yeah,
And
it's really,
it's been our best selling canned beverage, right?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
I think
popular.
this must be. We must distribute the cranberry cider more than anything else.
yeah, it goes
right?
all over the place. You know, what's interesting too, in the state liquor store, we have both the cans and the bottles. And the bottles have been there for quite a while. We introduced the cans in the state liquor store and they didn't sell very well.
Interesting. I wonder.
And they keep ordering the bottles, more and more bottles, more bottles.
I wonder if it's people are. I think people go to the liquor store. They're not looking to buy
Not thinking
cans.
about cans.
They're not.
Right.
You're not thinking
Right.
about cans at the
Right.
liquor store.
Right.
You might be thinking about cider, maybe. And it's true. These bottles are just.
But this is,
they're-
you know, it's another one of Deb's
It's
creations
a
with
bit
the
of a branding
Hermit
thing, I think.
and, you know, the little story.
Though the story on the can is just wonderful.
And the story on the can
I
is
do
Yeah,
love
that's
that.
this little
fantastic.
graphic novel.
Yeah, it is a
Yeah,
graphic novel.
Those are really fun.
Yeah, all that cans that we've in our first round of canning were just absolutely brilliant artistry.
Mm-hmm.
Just we have no idea.
Yeah, I love her stuff.
what the market relationship is to selling wine in a can, for example, or where
Right.
the cider cans go, or the Dogo. We had the Dogo heirloom crabapple in a can too, calling it Dogo, which is by far one of my favorite products we've ever made.
Oh, yes.
God rest its soul.
Yes.
There's only like
come back.
three
It will come
six
back.
packs
It will come
left.
back. I still have some
You still have
labels.
some
I still
left.
have some
Amazing.
blanks. So part of the impediment to putting out canned products, when you don't own the equipment to can products, you have to hire someone
Yep.
to
And
come
that's
and
tough.
can products. And when they come, they charge a base flat rate to even show up with all their equipment. So if they're going to charge you all that money to come and set up, you want to can a whole bunch of stuff.
Right.
And we only have 2 containers that we can can out of.
Correct.
So we've had to balance that. In the future, if all continues to go so swimmingly well, we will have the ability to can whatever we want, whenever we want. And that, folks, is when the floodgates are going to open. Because if I can take products and produce them in a month or 2, get them into can, that opens up that container again, which starts the clock on another one. So instead of doing a single product
Right.
a year, I can do 10 products
Yeah.
in a year.
Yep.
So that,
Fun. Yeah, there are a lot of our products that would be great in cans. You know, any of the ciders, but can actually, canned sparkling strawberry rhubarb.
oh yeah, well I have a
canned
whole bunch of session
rosé,
meads and
Canadolgo,
things like that.
and
Just
some of the meads, yeah,
gonna be
there are a lot
really,
of things that
really
would be
fun.
Really fun. Yeah. Matt, speaking of cans, yeah, Matt likes them on his bike,
of course,
of course.
of course,
Well,
very
and
good,
Christine
Matt.
mentions, yeah, liking
They
cans
fit
for
right in a
flipping
water
up.
bottle holder.
Yeah.
They just slide right in.
The cans are infinitely recyclable. They're lightweight. There's the shipping costs per unit is nothing compared to the weight of the glass
Yeah.
being shipped over. And the glass is really not recyclable. It just gets
They're
crushed
very-
and used as
Yep.
a space filler. So yeah, no, the
It's
cans
very
cans are tricky to deal with our product for sure. We learned some lessons with the whole canning.
We did.
And there's,
Canning
I
process.
think they're in the same way that transitioning from, corks to screw caps is a hurdle to get over. Going from bottles to cans, it's like canned wine, that can't be any good.
Right.
Right.
There's an educational
even
inertia that we
me,
have
I
to go
think,
across.
I always had a bit of a hard time with canned Petite Blue even.
Yeah.
It was good. It was wonderful, but
Right.
it was hard to
And it doesn't
see
taste the same when you drink it out of the
It's
can.
very different.
You want to pour it in a glass.
But for me, it's the lighter wines, the easier drinking, the rosés, the sparkling wines, the maybe slightly sweeter ones, lower alcohol, or the ciders.
I just want to take
perfect.
3 honey and put it in a can.
Oh yeah.
A lightly sparkled 3 honey in a can is going to be
Ooh.
just.
That's true. You haven't
I'm
done
going
a
to drink that
sparkling 3 honey.
nonstop.
You've done that in the past.
Oh,
right?
I did a traditional method
Oh,
of 3
my
honey,
God,
which
that's right.
Bob and Geraldine got to, I think, have the one bottle that actually worked. Because
I forgot
when you
about
bottle
that.
condition something, there's a challenge for the yeast, and especially if you're trying to do that with a wine. And so even in Champagne, they pick the grapes a little bit underripe, lower sugar, because when they prime it with the sugar, that's going to add some more alcohol to the product, and they want that to be properly balanced. So anyway, when it works beautifully, and I think canning, especially like a Session 3 honey, just that straight, clean honey note will be really
I
nice.
wonder, Bob, if you're still listening, how does Geraldine feel about carbonated 3 honey versus carbonated 3 honey in a can versus a glass of 3 honey still?
Yeah, that's a good question.
She'll have to see. She'll have to try it.
Oh,
and
Bob says he still has a few bottles of that bottle conditioned 3 honey.
Oh, we need to open those.
Geraldine loves the idea. Great. Geraldine approved.
Right.
All things 3 honey.
Yeah.
I think I mean, can you imagine the crabapple cider in a session?
A session crab. Oh,
A
I
session
love
crabapple
that.
cider.
Yep.
Honey,
That's a little sweeter than most of our
7%.
other meads are. But
It's
I
a
think
little
for
bit
me,
because it's a little bit sweeter to balance the fruit.
Yep.
I try to find that
it
balance.
is a good balance.
Yeah.
To me, because I don't generally like super sweet mead, but I have found that, a session mead that's a touch sweeter in a can is, just not too sweet. You don't want it to be too sweet because you are.
Right.
So
It's got to draw you back for another sip.
oh yeah. So yeah, Geraldine's real excited. As is Karen. Yeah. All right.
So would it be safe
we'll put
to
that on the to-do list.
It's on the to-do
After
list.
the, many thousands of dollars of canning line that would have to get purchased.
That's right. No problem.
We'll get there.
Would it be safe to say that in general, as a consumer, we're much better, much more aligned with carbonated things in a can versus still things in a can? I mean, I think that was one of the weird things about Petit Blue is that it was nitrogen charged still wine, and it was a perfectly good storage container. You could pour a glass out of the can, and you could pour a glass out of a glass, and you could not tell the difference. I mean, it was the same. The can was a great vessel, but you're just not going to flip top a still wine and drink it. Well, unless you're really thirsty, or your blueberry levels are low, or some other reason. But you're missing part of the experience.
Are carbonated, and there's something satisfying about that pop.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure.
But it seems like more of a cultural barrier than a practical one, because I think that the can is a great vessel for storing.
Yeah, I'd like to go into more cans. Like you said, it's a much better footprint, much more economical, much lighter all the way around, because it's primarily the liquid that you're transporting. This weighs nothing.
Yeah, these are crazy. The 1/1,000,000th of a nanometer of aluminum side
That's it.
that doesn't just.
And when cider
explode.
gets on the outside of it, it just eats right through it.
That's a whole nother show. Yeah. So,
Yes,
but this
indeed.
is absolutely a delicious cider. All of these are, I would love to say that Hermit Woods Winery is Hermit Woods Cidery, because our ciders are really exceptional products. Like the meadery at Hermit Woods, our meads are all exceptional products. But we have to be something somewhere, and
We do?
we are known as
We're known as a winery.
eatery.
We're called Hermit Woods
and
Winery.
a loftery. No, we're not a loftery.
We're not a
Oh, I
loftery.
like that word.
A loftery.
A loftery.
Yeah, we're a
Wow.
loftery.
Wow.
And it is fun, when we do sometimes get people coming in, particularly looking for cider or looking for mead, and it's great that we have those options, because I think especially actually with mead, you tend to get kind of quirky, nerdier people it's a niche offering, but when they're looking for it, they're excited that we have it. We have all these options.
Well,
And
it's a
cider's
good
kinda like
point
that
too,
in a way.
because some wineries add cider just because it's from a marketing standpoint.
Sure.
They know people
Or a
come in there,
brewery,
or they
It's
add
gluten free.
mead to their thing.
Yeah.
And it's not really their focus.
Right.
It's not really their main emphasis of their efforts go into it. It's just one of these things. They buy some sweet cider, they ferment it, they bottle it, and out it goes. For me, for us here, there's as much heart and soul goes into the cider as goes into the mead, as goes into any one of the wines. In fact, some of them, like this hard cider, our heirloom hard cider, is a much more significant product to produce for me. I'm pruning my pear tree in the wintertime, getting ready for next fall to harvest it, to freeze those pears, to wait for the Kingston Blacks to get ripe at Chuck Souther's farm for it to finally all come together as a one-time thing. The cranberry cider, I can order up frozen cranberries, I can order up fresh cider any time of the year.
Yeah.
So it's more of an easier product to assemble and a less significant one from a creative standpoint than something like this.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into it.
That's great. So we are at our 6:32 mark.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
What?
And this is what I think. What was fantastic about this to me is, so you suggested talking about Wild Blue and ciders, and my first reaction was, we've done that. We've done that a couple times, but every time we do a show, it's a different conversation. We learn different things. We've got different audience members. So it's been a great hour, a quick hour. So next week, maybe I don't know, maybe we can do something with Ben and Travis. I'll talk to them, see if we can do something.
We can do something.
We should try and
we can
get you
do
guys
something
live.
from Mont
Do
Blanc.
something, even if you record it early and we just post it at 5:30, that would be great. Or maybe we'll do something from here. But a few things to note for people coming up in between now and then.
Yes, you have quite a few activities going on.
Yeah, so this winter, is the slow season, so we have switched for our music nights being every other week.
Mm-hmm.
But we have balanced that on the weeks that we don't have a music show on Thursday nights. We have a movie night. So tomorrow night and every other Tuesday following until the end of March will be movie nights here in the loft. So tomorrow we're showing Ratatouille.
That's such a
which
great
I'm
movie.
so excited about. It is one of my
such a fun
favorite
movie.
movies, especially because it's a kids movie. It's an animated Pixar film, but it talks.
But those movies always they span
great.
Ages of audience. So it's done in an intellectual way
and
that will keep somebody who's older entertained.
So
because
all
of the
ages
little,
welcome, and it's great. It talks about wine and food pairing.
It sure does.
Or flavors and the experience of that very well.
Do you have to make a reservation?
Nope, that is no reservations
come, first
needed.
serve?
First
Just show
come,
up.
first serve, plenty of space, free admission, free popcorn.
Free
we
food,
close.
free
We
wine?
typically close at 5, but if you come anytime between 5 and 6:30 when the movie starts, you can get some food and get your wine. And then at 6:30, the kitchen will close, the movie will start, and we'll enjoy it. And then, we do. Travis did make some ratatouille, so that is a menu item available tomorrow.
Yeah.
We will have ratatouille, especially in honor for the show. And then next Sunday, we are doing our wine and cheese pairing event. We've done this a couple of times before. It's a fantastic event. So our tastings on Sunday, the 15th, will be wine and cheese pairing tastings. So we'll have stations set up around the room. We've got reps coming from a bunch of different creameries that we have cheese provided from. So we'll be pairing our wine with
If you
cheese
folks
bites.
haven't experienced that, I'm sure some of you have in the past. It's a really special event. It's once a year.
It's so much fun.
And it's really well done. And you get to taste wine and cheese right from the people that
and we make
craft
sure
this
that the
stuff.
wines that are at each station are sort of
Work
ones that
well
go
with it.
well. So
Yep.
it's super great. So hope to see some of you in the coming week. And otherwise we'll see you virtually.
We
next
have
Monday.
we have a lot going on.
As always.
Yes,
right?
we do.
You might think the winter's the slow season, but that's in a way it gives us time to put on cool events like this.
It is,
and
because
bring
we're
people
not
in and
flat out with so many other things. Right.
So thank you all again.
Thank you all.
If you enjoyed it,
Great
like
seeing
and
you.
subscribe, share with your friends.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you all.
Be well.
Here's to apples
Apples rule.
and blueberries.
And blueberries and cranberries.